A patient asked me a question, wanted me to do a video on communicating with their spouse and how to do that. And my initial reaction was, not my specialty. However, I have been married 26 years, and it's a little more complicated than just, having like techniques to communicate or to, have these, work through the attachment bonds and things like that, that a lot of other professionals are talking about on YouTube. So look those things up. However, when we get caught up in, oh, well, they're like that and I'm like this, and we're not going to change, it could cause, giving up on that relationship, which is not always the wrong thing. Or it could kind of lead to this kind of fixation on those kinds of concepts. There's three things when dealing with a relationship. There's you, there's the other person, and then there's the us. And oftentimes we are focusing on them, what they are doing or not doing, and creating that is the problem in the us. One of the things that I talk about so much, and it's not a popular opinion, is that we are the only person that we can control. We cannot control our spouse. We cannot make them want to grow. We cannot make them change. But what is causing you to feel so triggered by them? And that's what you have to kind of dig into and figure out. So let's talk about that. At some point, there was a magical relationship that you decided to marry or get into a long-term commitment with this person. Likely, they didn't change. And I can talk about this in my own relationship because I think we had a very, very good, solid relationship for 7 years. Now, we've been married 26. But what happened? Well, the first thing, one of our adopted sons died, and then his biological sisters began to cause a lot of stress in our family dynamic. And I felt like I was doing all of the work to stabilize the family, both physically, emotionally, and mentally in the dynamics of the family. So there's a little bit of resentment started. So think about that for a second. Is there a time in your life where things began to shift with you and your spouse? Because I want you to go back to that point and self-evaluate. Is it really fair for me to begin to have resentment to a man who committed to adopting 5 children? He's a good man. He tried to be there. He continued, and then start to think about, and this is what I do with myself, I start to think about all the things that he did do. I'm an empath. I'm emotional. I'm a fixer. So in the beginning, I was in there trying to fix. And of course, it was, our daughters. And, sometimes husbands have a hard time with daughters, emotionally connecting. And so is it really fair that I began to have resentment at that time? And honestly, in my case, it was not. So oftentimes I go back and kind of self-evaluate what could I have done differently and begin to communicate those things with your spouse. When this patient asked the question, how do I communicate with my spouse? I really feel like it was, kind of, how do I fix this problem? And he is the problem. Or maybe there is some admitting to being part of the problem and then not feeling like when you do apologize, it's completely received. Not all relationships can be fixed, but I can guarantee you the only thing you need to know from this video is working on yourself, your triggers. Why does this hurt so much? Like, dig deep and then as you're doing that, as you're improving yourself, you are going to be more kind and possibly be able to communicate with your spouse. So remember, there's 3 parts of relationship: you, the other person, and then the us. And so you have to start with you. That's the only one you have complete control of. And then you can work on the us, but you can't work on the other person. And so, not a popular opinion. I wish I could say there's the magic and you can fix all relationships. Or, you can have good communication in all relationships. But you're both there. If the person hasn't left, there is still this desire to make it work. And so remember, begin to work on yourself. Watch some of my other videos about the Mentally Strong Method and being able to work through the buttons that your spouse are pushing in you. And I hope that you can learn to communicate with your spouse.